Since the dawn of time, people have used execution as a means of punishment. In the past, people were stoned to death or decapitated using a guillotine. Today, we use a variety of methods, including hanging, firing squads, the electric chair, and the most humane and widely accepted way, lethal injection. Hammurabi's codes called for execution in the event of murder. During the Salem witch trials, many people were put to death if they were thought to be witches. And during the French Revolution, people were put to death simply for disagreeing with the government. But the question is capital punishment an acceptable practice for today's society? According to a chart by Amnesty International, the U.S. executed 52 people in 2009, while China put down roughly 1,700 people in 2009. This is a debate that has been going on for some time with heavy support on both sides. In Leviticus chapter 20, the Bible clearly states that if a man or a woman violates certain laws, they must be put to death. However, Jesus Christ himself prevented a woman from being stoned to death, in which this is a stone that would probably have been used. I believe that capital punishment is an acceptable means of dealing with criminals, but there are conditions that go along with this. In my opinion, killings related to a drunken rage and killings related to a serial killer's premeditated deranged fun are not the same thing and should not be treated as the same thing. Capital punishment should be reserved for premeditated murders and rape only, in my opinion. Anything less than that should involve heavy prison time, but not death. In the court case, Furman v. Georgia, a man awoke in his home to find himself being burglarized. When the burglar realized he had been found out, he ran and tripped, and he accidentally fired a gun and somehow killed the man who he was robbing. Because the murder happened during a crime, he was eligible for the death penalty. The court ruled, however, that to carry out the death penalty under these circumstances would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. This is a good example of why the death penalty should be used carefully, only under certain conditions, and not on someone who simply is able to fit a checklist. There is currently a minimum age of execution in the U.S. of 18, and I believe this is a fair age, because at the age of 18, you are fully capable of understanding what it is you have done, and therefore you should be able to be punished accordingly. But if you're under 18, it could be argued that you are not fully aware, and also not an adult, so therefore you should be 18 in order to be executed. I believe it should also be illegal to execute the mentally handicapped, and in some cases the insane, as they may also not understand what it is they have done. There also has to be a method to this. In TV shows, movies, comic books, we fantasize about people like the Punisher. They go out and take the law into their own hands, executing murderers and rapists themselves. While this sounds cool, it can't be done in that way. Just because they may be found guilty in court and be sentenced to death doesn't mean that someone can go and do it themselves before the trial is even underway. There's a system that must be carried out carefully. The U.S. Constitution guarantees people to the right to a fair and speedy trial, and this is essential. Without this, people could be executed for crimes they did not commit, which is the single greatest argument against capital punishment. While this is a problem, it's not a selling point. With advances in today's forensic technology, we are more sure than ever when we convict someone of a crime. There is a call to raise the standard proof to no shadow of a doubt. And I believe this is acceptable, as it is quite a serious thing when someone is executed for a crime they did not commit. Personally, it doesn't matter to me the method of execution, so long as it is humane. Even though the person has committed an awful crime, they are still a human and must be treated as such. Currently, there are certain procedures that must be followed before execution, such as the last meal. I believe that it is important to keep these in place because, once again, the person is still human and must be treated as such. While the death penalty is a hot subject of debate, it is surprisingly accepted worldwide. According to an AFP article in the United States, 78% of Republicans and 52% of Democrats support the death penalty. This is a clear majority supporting the death penalty. I believe that the death penalty is a necessary and acceptable method of punishment, but it must be used carefully as not to turn us into barbarians. In some Middle Eastern countries, the death penalty is used on people who so much as renounce their religion. We must be careful to never come close to going that far.